Hey everyone, welcome back to the Tattoos with Intention podcast, where we unpack the tattoo paradigm. Thanks for joining again. I'm your host, Mark Nara. And just a quick note before we start, if you do enjoy listening to this podcast, or if you've found value in any of the conversations that we have had in the past, could you please give us a follow or share the podcast? That'll help in getting the conversation out to a broader audience about intentional tattooing. These conversations that we have here are part of a broader initiative by Tattoo Pathway to share knowledge. And the podcast is zero cost information, and it's aimed to give you insights and tools that'll be beneficial in regards to relating to your own tattoo journey in a more meaningful way. So we'd really appreciate that. In today's episode, we have a return guest, Shane Gallagher Coley. He's a very proficient technical artist and he's very spiritually adept. So I'm sure there'll be lots of takeaways today. We take an expansive and multifaceted look at tattoo artistry. We touch on cultural and spiritual elements, ancient practices, and the energetic impact of designs. Shane reveals how patterns and symbols in tattoos connect individuals with their ancestors and influence their energy frequencies. We also discuss the broad implications of tattoos in terms of spiritual healing and resonance, and we talk about methods for determining the optimal design and placement for energetic alignment within tattoos. Shane has also put a podcast series up in the past called The Alchemy of Tattoo, and he's in the process of writing a book and planning workshops to share his extensive knowledge in this domain. And lastly, the conversation we have today reflects on the cyclical nature of the tattoo industry's evolution, suggesting a move toward more intentional and culturally resonant tattoo practices. All the relevant links will be in the show notes below in regards to contacting or working with Shane. Hope you enjoy.
Been tattooing, I worked it out the other day, 38 years now.
Oosh.
Which sounds like, what the hell?
Yeah.
38 years, like nearly 40 years. I'm like, God, so many things happened. I just started seeing something a lot deeper and energetic going on. For some reason, I have this connection with all this kind of energetic stuff, energetic work or energetic understandings around things. And that started out because of, it's always been there, but with the tattooing, I started wanting to understand what was going on and just how it was affecting people, how the act of receiving tattoos and specific kinds of tattoos, how they energetically affect people or shift them. I understood that shapes and designs hold an energy or emit a certain frequency, and I understood it, but I didn't know how to explain it or prove it, or if I was to talk about it, you just had to believe. I don't understand what you're talking about, but I'll just believe you. I wanted to be able to prove it. Like, I wanted to be able to explain, oh, this is what's going on with it. And in that period, I was like wanting to understand, and I started looking into quantum physics and cellular biology and all these things, all these avenues, and it wasn't really giving me any answers. It was just giving me more. It was opening more up, but it was like not really making a definable explanation for anything. And then I just asked, show me where I can find this out. How do I find this out? How do I learn this? And then a sequence of events happened that led me to that course in the US I went to about the Egyptian knowledge around shape and energy and resonance, and how it wasn't just the Egyptians that understood this, but it was that corridor that I went down. I understand now that all ancient cultures, everyone around the world understood how to use shape and structures to create certain resonance and energy and vibration and frequencies. Even with all the old world buildings are designed that way, whether they be designed for healing or for harnessing energy from the ether or the earth to create electricity. All these buildings are designed, they're machines basically.
Yes.
And actually I was reading something the other day, and I can't remember who said it. It was, I might have been an artist, like an old artist from, I don't know, I can't remember the name now, but he was talking about the old world buildings, and he said the buildings were frozen music.
Frozen music.
Yeah, so because all the structures and the elements in the structures had purpose because of their shape.
Yes.
So energy can be directed, energy can be emitted. If you look at the old cathedrals, I think I talked about this last time, but cathedrals, they're just buildings of harmonics. They're made out of cymatics, which is sound frequency being where you can see it. You know, when cymatics, where they put like sand on a sheet of steel and they play a note through it and it vibrates into a shape, into a sacred geometry shape,
Yes.
or a mandala. And those things are all repeated into solid form in the cathedrals and lots of buildings. Like the windows of the cathedrals are cymatic shapes of sound captured. And once you grasp the understanding that things work on all different levels, so a sound can be a shape and a color, and it just keeps going. There's all these different levels that hold the same frequency, that hold the same information. I'm just using the cathedral windows as an example because they look like mandalas. They're actual shapes of sound, but they're frozen. But because that information is frozen in that shape, it's emitting it into the building.
Yes.
Or out into the surrounding area.
Yeah.
And then you're grasping the concept of that where, okay, you've constructed something that's solid, but it's a sound. So even with that solid structure, it's a 3D structure, can be drawn onto paper even, or onto the skin. A 3D structure can be now 2D. So it's a 2D version of it. It still holds the same information. It's still emitting that same stuff.
Yes, it still has the same resonance. Yeah,
Yes.
I looked up resonance just before, because when I was making these notes, I was like, all right, we're going to touch on these things. And even though I follow what you're saying, I thought maybe just having a couple of definitions. I use a pretty old dictionary because I think things are starting to get distilled too much as well. But like an 1800s dictionary, when I put in resonance, it said a resounding or a sound returning. So a sound returned. And then it says, for example, a hollow instrument, the reverberation of sound. And so with that extra layer you're putting there of like sound, shape, color, actually all the same resonance, but in different forms, it makes a lot of sense. Hey, makes a lot of sense. They're all the same information, but with a different form.
Comes into resonance with it. I was even looking at, because I'm writing a book at the moment, so expanding on some of the stuff that I've learned and want to share. And just the other day, I was remembering some teachings I received years ago, and I forgot about it. And it's like harmonics is part of that as well. And if you look at a piano, the keys of a piano, and it goes, C, B, or however it starts at C, goes through the notes, and then it starts at C again. It's an octave.
That's right. Yeah.
So there's levels of these octaves of those frequencies, those tones, tunes. And what this teaching was about was you can see those octaves as different planes, higher and higher planes. So if you, in this plane here, creating something or designing something that has a certain resonance here, it will be resonating with that same note or that same frequency on a higher plane as well, on a higher octave.
Okay.
So this is how we can connect to the spiritual planes, like gold, for example. They call it the higher harmonic of gold, which is also a frequency, not just the solid gold. The solid gold holds that frequency information, but that color frequency, or frequency, the higher harmonic of gold, which is an energy, which is present in places, sacred energy spots. That's why they build churches and stone circles and temples over these areas. It was used so much in spiritual work because it was resonating with the higher harmonic of gold on a higher octave, on another plane, which is the plane of divine wisdom. So when you are here working with that higher harmonic of gold in this realm, in this octave, you're interacting with that higher plane, the plane of divine wisdom. So this is where you're in resonance with it.
I'm with you.
So that's why when these spiritual practices, they do that. They use gold as their medium.
Yeah. So it's the equivalent of, say, one of the notes in our octave is gold. That same note is present in every octave above. as well. And so by working with that note here, we're accessing information from that other octave through that note.
That's right. You can think of it as a tuning fork of that note in this octave, and there's a tuning fork of that note in the next octave. And when you bang that and it's vibrating, it will make the other one vibrate because it's coming into resonance with it. Same with the sing bowl. You're playing a sing bowl of one octave note, and you've got another one over there that's of a higher octave. It'll start ringing. In that understanding that you're doing that here in this realm to connect to the plane of divine wisdom, you activate it here to come into resonance with it.
So the resonance, the one tuning fork making the other one, we're like hitting it here. If you were trying to do something within a sacred context, it resonates with this other one, and you've established an energy or a line of communication.
Exactly that. It's an information exchange.
Yeah. Okay. So with that, it segues into, I saw on your Instagram 2 days ago what happened with the instrument you made and that crop circle. Just segueing from what we're talking about, different octaves and the resonance. Okay, firstly, I think we've got to frame it up so people know what we're talking about. But it's a bit of an anomaly. What we're talking about helps me understand it a little bit, but I'd love to hear your take on it.
Yeah, so I guess just to frame it a little bit, the knowledge I learned at this ancient Egyptian course, workshop thing that I went to, which basically it's biogeometry. So biogeometry holds the understandings and knowledge of ancient Egyptian knowledge around shape and using certain shapes and numbers and ratios and angles to create certain energy qualities.
Yeah.
So it's about talking about quality instead of quantity of energy. So there's all different kinds of qualities of energy that you can create through shape or design or pattern. And it's just one branch of the biogeometry learnings is being able to use those shapes to help balance and harmonize the environment where there might be detrimental energies going on. Whether that be through ley lines going through your home or earth grid lines. Not all of them are bad, but some of them are. They can carry through detrimental energies, and some of them where they're crossing over. We're not neutralizing them, we're not blocking them or anything, we're just transmuting them by using shape and these little instruments, these little like devices that hold the shapes and the frequencies that to transmute that energy into more healing life force energy, which they call the BG3. So when you create these shapes, they then emit these three frequencies, the ultraviolet, in negative green, and the high harmonic of gold. So when those are present, you're creating the BG, what they call BG3, which is a life force healing energy, and it transmutes detrimental energy. And understanding this, you can place certain shapes around the place, and you got to find where they need to go to transmute that energy in a home or an area or a place. It's been done with towns. It's been done with farms, orchards, stuff like that to enhance the energy there into a more positive thing. Anyway, I'm trying to get through this quickly. So I go into places and use these little shapes and structures. I call them ancient technology devices. You can get these, but I like to build my own because I like to enhance them a bit more. In the training, when they were teaching us this, they were like, expand this, go out and expand this, work with this stuff, work with this information, come up with new devices, new structures, new combinations to see what happens, because this is information that's coming back. It used to be known and now it's being revived. So we need to work with it to create even more potent ones or just different ones. So I've been doing a lot of that over the time and using them, doing home balancing and home harmonizing to what we call transmute the home space into a grid of gold. So it's that place is the serene life force energy healing environment just through putting these shapes in certain places and creating these things. So I've been playing with that, doing that, getting awesome results. In fact, just the other day I did a home and I just placed these devices on a few earth grid lines that were coming through the house and they're crossing over, and it wasn't good energy. So I placed them to transmit the energy. As soon as I'd done it, like literally within minutes, maybe 5-10 minutes, this butterfly had come in through the garage, like hard out, fluttering, come in through the garage, down a hallway, up the stairs, and then landed right next to the device that I'd placed there, and just stayed there for days. It was like nature's confirmation. The people I was doing the house for, like I said, that kind of thing where you just got to believe sometimes. Oh, yeah, this person knows what he's doing, and I don't know how it works, but yeah, cool. But when something like that happens, it's like a visual confirmation.
It's a confirmation
from nature going, oh, okay, that's working. So yeah, especially with the butterfly, it's like. So anyway, back to the story. I felt I needed to create these cubes, and so the other day, I actually went to to an iffy. So went to his place to get to use his saw, and we cut up a whole lot of these cubes because I was going to put the certain shapes and angles onto those cubes, and I was just going to create some new ones. And I got up in the morning and I had some ideas of what I was going to do, and I started doing that, and it just wasn't really working through. And there was this other concept kept nudging me like a download. And I was, okay, I'll just do that then. I'll just build that. But it seemed really simple. It seemed really basic and simple. And I wanted to create this thing that I wanted to add more to it, make it more powerful. But it was just a simple concept. And I drew it down like the cube, like a 3D version of it. And then just like a plan version of it with where the energy would be coming from those structures, from those shapes. It was a square, and I had these circles around on each side where I put these things. That's where energy was being created and pumped out and emitted.
Yeah.
So I drawn it down. I built the cube, and I was like, oh yeah, cool. And I tested it because we've got a tool. There's a certain pendulum that will pick up on those 3 frequencies to make sure that it's emitting the BG3 or the life force energy. So used that. Yep, working, all good. And it was like I didn't stop making it. I stayed up late, and I was like, it needs to be finished. It needs to be finished today. I need to do this. And completed it. And then the next morning I woke up. When I opened Instagram, the first post was this crop circle that appeared.
Yeah.
So it was the 14th of July in Australia when I did it. And I woke up, and the post had a crop circle, and it had 14th of July, and it was in the UK, in Wiltshire. And I looked and I was like, that's the plan. That's the top view. It's nearly exactly the same. It was a square with the circles on each side of the square.
Same shape.
And I went and had a look. I put them together. Like, whoa, yeah.
Amazing.
So I don't know what happened there, but it was like something was being delivered. Something was like, this is the design. Here, do it.
Yeah. Well, my mind goes into so many different angles with it. We were just talking about the different notes through different octaves, right? And so when you say download, like you're getting nudged and there's a download around, I'm going to do something. Even unpacking that a little bit, again, for people that are listening to understand a bit more around what you're talking about, because it's different to say imagination or creativity, right? When you're talking about something being a download, it's more like there's a specific instruction there that has come from somewhere, a different octave potentially, right? How would you say that?
And then you have to use your imagination, creativity to produce it.
Okay. Yep.
To bring it into reality. All of a sudden, a knocking or a nudge or I need to do this. I don't know why, but yeah. And it won't let you not. Like I said, I tried to do these other things. I tried to build these other ones that I was planning to build, and it just wasn't working out. It was just like, that's failing. That's not working.
Yeah.
Okay, I'll just do the one that's been pushing in. So I did that. And the other thing interesting about that as well, the woman that posted it, I haven't been able to contact her, and you can't tag her for some reason. She's got tags turned off. And I looked today, and she still hasn't seen the message or anything, because I wanted her to see the post, just to see what her thoughts are. But so she'd posted the one of the crop circle that had appeared on the 14th of July there. And then she posted on her story as well. And on the story, she had posted a square that's spinning, because in the biogeometry understanding, the rotation also helps create the BG3. So when you get a shape and you rotate it like that, repeat it and rotate it, that is creating a BG3 energy. So that was part of the design on it that I put on all of the sides, was the square rotating. But even though it's set and solid, it doesn't have to rotate physically. But when you place a shape or even draw a shape and then draw it a little bit rotated and then draw it a little bit rotated, that is creating BG3. So this is where we can introduce this into our work, our designs, our tattooing, things like that. These kind of concepts can create our own. So she had put it there and it's like spinning and it's like, what the
animated. She had it animated. Hey, I saw that.
Yes. Yeah. It's animated spinning, which is the same things on the side of the cube that I made.
Yeah, and so the drawing in the crop circle where the circle, it's like the square with the 4 circles. That circle is to represent the field of the spinning square geometry.
Yes, that's like where the energy is being created there and emitting from those spots on the side of the thing, which is what I drew on it, looking down on it, to place those rotating squares on each side. So you can see on my drawing, I've drawn it on top and then a little bit on the, like a side version of it. And I've put the little circles there and another little line around it, like a radiating line from it. That's where the energy is being created and emitted from.
Yep.
And on the crop circle, it's got the same thing.
Yeah, I'm going to have to put a photo in the show notes. When people are listening, they can just open it up and have a look at what we're talking about. But yeah, highly synchronized. And then I guess the other thing, the other question mark in that whole thing, okay, I can get up to speed with Shane's getting a download to create an instrument. He's got this training. So of course, if something from another octave is resonating, it has to be picked up here. That makes sense. Like you're saying, you can't not do it. It's like the tuning fork can't not pick up the signal. But then what's the crop circle?
Right,
Like what? I don't know enough about them, but part of me just goes, what was picking that up that creates that? Or is it just energy being imprinted? What's your take on it's a big thing, obviously, but what a crop circle is?
Yeah, like how is it even made?
Yeah.
All these like concepts that have captured them being made, and it's like, what? It's just appearing. Yeah, it's interesting because so many of them are sacred geometry shapes and things that are like on a 2D representation of a 3D object. So many of them are actually 3D objects, but done into 2D. So it still holds the information.
Yes.
I don't know what I'm only coming up with this right now because
that's cool, man.
Maybe there was a resonance there. Maybe it was from wherever, another octave, another plane, going, okay, what we want to send this information. And so, like you said just before, because I understand the concepts and the information and have the knowledge of how to work with these concepts, that means I'm in resonance with that. So they're sending the information, and because I'm in resonance with that through understanding the knowledge, it came to me. Okay, but make it this way.
Yeah.
Also, someone else had put in the comments, or actually a couple of people put in the comments, maybe it was you that created the crop circle because it was the day before, it was like, and I made it, and the next thing it appears over there.
Yeah.
I don't know.
Yeah, my mind's connecting dots in a couple of ways through our conversation, and I'm just like, okay, from that other octave, like you would go into a home and place objects on the home, is some layer of intelligence from another octave placing the crop circle the same way you'd place an instrument in a home. Going, okay, that lower octave, the earth octave, needs this resonance here at the moment, so we'll put it there. And I don't know enough about crop circles in terms of what the locations are where they appear and whether they're the spots where you would put the instruments to keep things balanced or whatever. So maybe that's happening. And then at the same time, it's almost like your radio signals picked it up as well. You know, you're tuned in as well. But at the same time, you've tuned in. You can just pick up a radio signal or something. Maybe it's like that.
Yeah.
So it's come through in multiple areas, picked it up. Fascinating stuff anyway. And like for people listening, definitely have a look because it's not a magic trick, but it seems like one. Yeah. And obviously there's a big connection when you start processing the things that Shane's talking about with me at the moment, there's a big connection to tattoos. And so what energy each symbol holds, and then where it's placed and how that will affect your own octave's energy as an individual, right? And we'll go more in that direction when we talk about your book and course and stuff at the end. But the next thing I wanted to go towards was identity with tattooing and ancestry and healing. And so those three things, they all can be integrated into that conversation as well. But so identity is like, when I think about it, and it's a big one with people getting tattooed, the process a lot of the time has these questions there of who am I? Where do I belong? Or what's my story, right? That's a big part of people engaging with getting their skin marked. So what's your take on patterns, energy, and its place with our identity? And if you want to bridge that into the ancestor stuff too, to help correlate it. But obviously ancestors play a part in our identity. But you work there a lot, and like you've told me, not everyone puts those pieces together. I haven't for a long time, right? So
Yeah, where do I start with that? So the first part of your question, like with the patterns and the designs, the way I see it is that the reason there's traditional patterns and designs that have stayed the same is because they are in resonance with something. So it's important to keep that pattern the same, that design the same. It's a symbol that's in communication with another octave, another level, another plane, or it's in communication, information exchange with that thing in our realm. So using the koru for an example, the spiral, which is the shape, same shape as the fern before it unfolds.
Yep.
So if you draw that shape, it is now in resonance with the fern unfurled. There's an information exchange now. So what that fern holds is now being brought into our field.
So if you were to have that spiral tattooed onto you, it would bring the information of that.
Yeah, and what that represents and what it is energetically emitting, and it means a lot of different things. Same with just the normal spiral, or the double spiral, a spiral, which kind of represents the universe and creation and life and death and all that information. The journey inwards and then the healing and the coming back out. Healed. All of these different concepts that the spiral represents, when you're wearing it, those concepts are being, it's the information and energy flow of that has been integrated in with you. There's an energetic informational exchange when two things are in resonance. And so when I think about that, that's why like symbols are a language. So when you're getting them on you, you're receiving information of their language, of the concepts, or what they mean and what they express. Yeah. I'll just go off track here a little bit. I shared the story of how, way back when people were painting on caves, they'd paint a bison or a buffalo on the wall. And so the understanding is that back then we could perceive a lot more. So when we looked at an animal or a shape or a thing, we could actually see the energetic life-lying sort of thing vibrating around it.
Yep.
You could see that movement, that energy movement pattern around the animal, or just use that as an example. And so what they were doing was painting that energetic flow, movement pattern of that bison or buffalo onto the wall, so that then they're coming into resonance with the buffalo out there, or a bison out there. So they're coming into resonance with it by creating the energetic form, the energetic flow of it here. So you're using a form of, okay, I'm in connection with that now. So if you're going to go hunting it or whatever, I'm in connection with it now. I can follow it through my own direction by being connected to it. And that's why they put like hands, their own handprint on it, because then it's, I'm going to be touching this. I'm in resonance with it. There's now an information exchange. So then you go hunt it. They even had these things, these two pieces of wood. I think I might have talked about this last time, but they had a stick or a pole, and then another piece of wood that went on top of it that could spin. and they would carve the same shape, the energetic shape of that animal onto that stick. They could move back, they could spin, and they'd go out, and because of that shape, it was in resonance with the energy of the buffalo. The stick would point in that direction because it's in resonance with it. It would turn and point into,
like a compass.
So you'd go that way, like a compass, yeah. So it's, because it's an energetic information exchange, it's going to take you to it. It's going to attract you to it.
Yeah.
So going back to that, my understanding anyway is when you're getting tattoos that are of your ancestors or of your lineage, you are coming into energetic information exchange with them, with those who wore it then, or with, the connection there. I feel that from my experience as well with the ancestral healing in regards to this, is once people have been tattooed with the designs or the patterns of their ancestors, or they're connecting to their culture, or they're discovering it, there becomes an interest where you want to revive the gifts that your ancestors had. People have resistance to connecting with ancestors sometimes because of bad things that have happened, and whether that be in the family or whether in the generational trauma, or it could be something in history that certain people didn't do that was pretty, it wasn't very nice, or there's this resistance sometimes. But just because something happened there doesn't mean it's always been like that. And we need to look beyond those pockets of trauma, or pockets where there was bad things done. We're not, it isn't that the whole lineage of your people are like that. Just a little pocket or something, an event happened. And most of the time these events weren't really in the minds or thoughts, or that the actual people didn't decide to do that. It was whoever the leaders were. And so it's not something that you can't, it's a tricky one. But going beyond that and looking at what gifts your ancestors have brought, whether it's in language or cultural things or art, or the gifts that we can revive and bring into now, just even different strains of knowledge, wisdom, stuff like that. I think the process of getting tattooed really connects you to that work of healing.
Yes.
When you do that, when you're connecting in a positive way to your ancestral lineage, you are healing it, especially if you're connecting to it before the troubles. So if you're going back to older than the troubles of whoever your lineage is, and there's a healing coming forward towards you from past, towards you, as it comes through, it's healing those ancestors that did do wrong. It's transforming that energy, transmuting it into a healed lineage.
Yeah, I'm with you.
Makes sense?
Yeah, I mean, the way I'm picking it up, right? And again, I'm just going to reiterate the same thing in different words to see if, I'm getting it right, and for other people following to see if that helps as well. But I've got down like identity as, again, using that old dictionary, the 1800s one, as sameness. Yeah? Sameness that distinguishes from diversity. And then...
Yeah, it sounds similar to the meaning of resonance.
It does, right?
Sameness.
Yeah. And so then...
Yeah, so identity is coming into resonance with something.
Exactly.
In resonance.
So with our question of like identity and ancestry and the tattooing part of it, it's like what we've just been talking about this whole time. If you mark yourself with patterns and symbols that are the same as your ancestors, so you're taking on that identity, the same one as them, the energetics, the resonance of that pattern should bring you into alignment and connection, establish that connection through the octaves, because your ancestors aren't here on this octave. They're in a different octave, right? They exist in a place that's above this or below this or wherever around this. I don't know how it works, right? It's probably more complex than the piano octave, but they're somewhere else.
Yeah.
And so we're connecting to them through the patterns we bring into resonance. And then what you're saying on the healing side of it is our ancestral line might be like 50 octaves, and there might be like an octave or two where there was some bad stuff happening, like some trauma or something happened that was disruptive energetically. And so if you can bridge to your ancestry before that, there's going to be like a resolve, like that moment will be ironed out or smoothed out somehow.
Yeah, it'll be transmuted.
Or reconnected, maybe?
Yeah, it's like tuning the piano. So you've got all these different notes and these octaves, and if you go down and if you go back and you're playing and you're connecting to these notes at a further back octave or further up octave or whatever, and you're playing that, it's going to bring into resonance. It's going to help retune those octaves that weren't they were out of tune.
Yeah, out of tune.
Things bad happened.
Yep.
And they were out of tune, so you're bringing that into tune. It doesn't mean that the stuff didn't happen and that it shouldn't be acknowledged, but in the journey of healing a lineage and settling it so that it's not affecting you now, because there's bullshit. If it's out of tune and somewhere down the line, we're still in connection with that, and some of those attributes and those things that those ancestors carry, because they haven't been healed, can affect us now. And it's things like addiction and certain health issues and stuff like that that can affect us in our lives now from something from our ancestry, because trauma is carried through our cells, cellular memory and cellular imprint. So we do feel those things, and if we're able to heal that note in our ancestry, if we're able to retune it, bring it back into tune, it's going to settle that connection with us. It'll heal generational, what do you call it, when something keeps getting carried down. A lot of people are afflicted by certain things because it's of ancestry, because it's been held in generational trauma, and they're not deciding to do it, it's just affecting them because it's resonating here. So by healing through that lineage, we're healing ourselves and our descendants. It's up to us. We can be really, if we recognize this and work on it now, then the future generations they're not going to be affected by these things. If we don't do anything, it's going to keep going into next generations, this affliction that's there. So, we're the tip of the spearhead here, and what we do here changes the rest of our lineage. And one day we're going to be an ancestor.
Yeah, again, there's a couple of visuals that I get when you're saying this stuff that maybe reiterating will help paint the picture more for people too, that are trying to catch it. So we've got the octaves. Each octave has different notes and things resonate. Also, I think it's like each new generation is setting up a new sort of octave of notes almost. That's the genetic, you're carrying things on, right? So if one of the notes is out of tune, and so we all have notes that are probably out of tune because the generation before something disrupted or made it go out of tune. So we're carrying that on in our genetics. That note's still out of tune. And so the more we can bring our octave back into resonance with a past octave where all the notes were in tune or more in tune, then that's going to set up the next octave of our pattern, and the next one will be more in tune, that type of thing. I was tattooing this fella the other day and started, like after we had that last phone call, I was like, I've been having some conversations about this ancestral stuff. And he's real science-based, super science-based dude. And I mentioned it, and it happens every time he comes in. I'll talk about something that's like, I'm not coming from a science angle, and it'll click in his scientific mind. And he's, it's epigenetics. Yeah, I get that. And I was like, I was like trying to explore what patterns might be in his ancestry. And he's, because in epigenetics, and I didn't get this, but he said there's like dormant and active genes. And if you experience a trauma, it's held in your genes and it will remain dormant until something activates it. And then those genetics turn on in this lifetime. Yeah. And it could be like 3-4 generations ago. Further. Yeah. They don't know how long. And he goes, so it would make sense if you were to get tattooed with a pattern that an ancestor's used, that it might activate certain genetics within you in response. You would start to resonate with them, because you're identifying, you're coming into the sameness. And so he had that scientific lens, and I was like, oh, wow, it works there too. Of course it does, but it was beautiful to see that.
And just touching on that, just so that everyone can understand. Because you said we get tattooed with something exactly the same, or the exact same tattoo as an ancestor. Like, it doesn't have to be the exact tattoo. Most of the time we don't know what it looked like anyway, but it's the patterns. We can arrange them in whatever style, whatever design we like, but it's the shapes and patterns that are involved in that design that need to be the same. If you've got a record of an ancestor that has a certain tattoo and you want to get exactly the same, cool, do it. That's great. But most of the time we don't know. We're just going off the information that we do have of what shapes and symbols were used, and we can use them here and keep them traditional, keep them the same. Don't change them, because they're that shape for a reason.
Yeah, and so what you're saying is patterns that exist within that culture of your ancestors. So it could be stonework, woodwork, leatherwork, cloth, tattoos, paintings, buildings, because all of those patterns are influencing your ancestors at that time. They were all influencing them, right?
A lot of the times, the same patterns we used as tattoos. This is the thing. A lot of cultures, especially the Western cultures, have lost the information of what they were getting tattooed. What were the symbols? Because it was never recorded, and it was so long ago that it was stopped. Like most of that practice was stopped 2,000 years ago. So there's nothing recorded of what those patterns were. But if we look at what was carved into the stones, or into even the jewelry and stuff like that, the patterns were important. What was carved into things was also used on the skin. Look at with Maori, they still have a lot of information of what the patterns have always been, and it's represented in their carving. I mean, that was part of the revival. Was okay, what did we use as our tattooing? And they looked at the carvings, because that was the symbols, that was the shapes and symbols, that the carvings in wood. So they used that.
Yeah. It's reverse engineering, I think. That's how Tu mentioned it when I asked him in the revival. They're like, we have to look at what we do have to work out what the tattoos were, because we can see them too, but the information's in the other things. Information's in the other imprints. Yeah, amazing. It makes me think about like especially the Western, but I'll just say the globalized contemporary tattoo world, which I've had a big part in too. And just what we're bringing ourselves into resonance with, getting tattooed with less awareness, all of the different symbols and stuff. And
it feels, how right at the moment there's a bit of a crash in the tattoo industry thing globally.
Yeah.
There's a bit of a recession. And, there's a few reasons, because it blew up, right? And then there's billions of tattoos.
Yeah.
Could be, part of it oversaturation, part of it's financial, because it's hard to afford tattoos at the moment for it, globally. But I feel like there's this other thing going on energetically, or like the universe or the tattoo gods or whatever are coming in and going, hey, there needs to be a cleanup here. There needs to be a process of weeding out that, exactly what you're saying, where there's a lot of people come in without sort of the integrity of what the tattooing comes from, and they're just doing anything. They're just no reason, no alignment with what you're marking your skin with, and just no respect for a kind of thing. There's a big sort of like, I don't want to, I'm not standing on toes, but this is this feeling I'm getting, that there's like a great flood is coming through to clean it all up again and bring it back to, as a lot of tattoos will drop off, it'll come back to this sort of traditional way of marking our skins, and the integrity that was always there before. It just seems to have lost its integrity, and a lot of the artists coming through don't even want to know about where it comes from, what tattooing is not a culture, but I don't want to use the word industry either, but just as a craft itself. Just feels being kind of disrespected for a while, because of this big bubble of sort of, in a way, unconscious tattooists and the people tattooed as well, just not really thinking about what's going on or understanding it. But I feel what's going to be left is it will come back to this refined, again, traditional things. So a friend of mine, Nicole, she'd felt that there was a lull in the work, but for her, she's still working, she's still busy, because her clients that come to her, because she specializes in Japanese style tattooing, so a lot of her clients are coming to her for that kind of dedication in that work and getting a sleeve or a body piece or things like that. That's where it's going to come back to, is that really intentional, conscious reasons for getting tattooed and what it represents, instead of just fucking covering your body with whatever. It feels like there's a process of weeding out going on.
Bro, I totally agree.
And with all the cultural ones, all the really indigenous cultural tattoos will still be there. That's always been there, and it will be. And probably more so now because of the revival of a lot of cultures that had lost theirs. And do you know what I mean? Does that make sense? That it just feels like there's this cleaning up going on. There's too much. It's been overloaded with not the right energy in the tattoo craft.
Yeah.
That it's going to get cleaned up now.
Yeah, it totally does make sense for me. And I don't want to talk too much about what I'm doing here, because I want to get into what you're doing to contribute to that. But just to touch on it, it's like all the things you're saying, it's if maybe later when we have another phone call, if I went into what I've been getting nudged to put down in terms of the next course I'm doing and the bits and pieces I'm writing, it's completely in that space. Like I've constantly got people that I'm working with. I don't need to be tattooing every day of my life like I did when I was in a tattoo shop. And it's no longer about this like result of getting cool tattoos. People come and it's a process, right? Like your friend with the Japanese, or someone in a process where it's got a cultural significance. It's led by the process of the craft. The craft has a reason. It's not a product. So it's stable. Whereas as a product, where it's in this global consumer economy, it's oversaturated and the whole thing's crashing. And so you're right, a lot of things are going to sink in that environment. And what will still have legs at the end of it's going to be the things that have integrity. And even down to what we're talking about earlier, things that have due proportion. You know, they're balanced for the person. They're working on bringing the person into alignment, not spiraling them off into like illusion or something. And so I've noticed there's a backwards thing happening when I'm working with someone now, where it's going, what part of the tattoos that they have, it's not like what are we doing, it's more like what's already been done. What's already been done with the tattoos, and really paying attention to that, because a lot of tattooing's happened really fast, not on just individuals, but on humans globally. They've gone really hard at getting tattooed with a lot of stuff. So like you're saying, as a result, everybody with all of these tattoos that have happened really quickly unconsciously, the result of that energetic signatures causing a wave. So feeding back into that in terms of what it is that you're currently working on with your book. The book's going to be specifically on tattooing in the way that you're doing it, or how would you?
Yeah, it's directed to tattooing and tattooists, but anyone can read it because the information in there can be good and taken by anyone. They don't have to be a tattooist to read it, because they're all concepts. Over years and years and years, over my career, there's been all these elements that have kind of affected and helped me understand certain things, and whether it be the intention behind a tattoo, the energetic frequencies that a tattoo has, what it does with you, how it affects you, ceremony around it, intuition, tools, and different understandings of ancient stuff. Usually I kind of bring into my work. And I was like, so what is this? I remember before I did my podcast, there's all this sort of different avenues that I've got that I understand, and I only really used a few of them in the series. But I had this thing that I needed to share it, I needed to talk about this, but it was really hard to sort of, how do I talk about it? There's just so much information. And then I just broke it all down into real simplified. I just simplified everything so that I was able to just talk about it in the podcast, each one. And then I just sat with that for a while. And then people were always saying, you need to write a book, Shane, you need to write a book. And I always had a feeling I should. And at first I started writing a book about all my stories and experiences. It's just crazy. The things that I've experienced are like, what the fuck? It's like a movie. When I tell people my stories, they're like, how do these things happen to you? But then it became apparent that no, I need to write a book about this stuff. And so because I'd broken it down to the podcast, it was like, okay, now it's in a sort of contained thing. I can expand on it, expand bigger on it, and then go into depth about everything a bit more. And so that's what I started doing with the book. And I was talking with some people about, because they were like, you've got so many different things that you bring, so many ingredients that you've kind of developed this own thing. There's not just this involved, it's different different branches coming in. And they're like, what do you call that, Shane? What do you call it? And I'm like, I don't know. Like, how do you put it into a concept with all these different directions? Because a lot of it is ancient knowledge. And then we had a hape and had a meditation. And at the end, one of the guys, he just comes out and goes, Energenosis. So energy, gnosis. So the energetic gnosis of things. So I thought that's a good name. That's a good word for it. So we invented a word for it. So the book is about the energenosis and the alchemy of tattooing. I'm just expanding in what I kind of talked about on the podcast, but really bringing a lot more understanding to it and depth to the concepts. And then some teachings on some of the techniques and things that I use. So things like radiesthesia and the use of the pendulums and a certain kind of pendulums, and being able to use the understanding of what I was talking about with shapes and stuff to create tattoos that hold certain frequencies or energy qualities that are beneficial. And so what I'll be teaching in there, which is also, I'll be talking about, it's in the book, but it needs to be taught as well, as in like in a workshop, so you can see what's going on as well.
Yep.
But basically, I'm sharing how you do it, what kind of shapes are important, what kind of numbers, combinations, and things like, and then being able to test them to make sure that they are emitting that certain frequency, because there's techniques to test them. So I'll be teaching that in there, and also how to bring that into, to make sure a tattoo is in alignment with someone through finding their frequency and then matching that, testing it with the design. And if it's not quite in alignment, you can adjust the design so it is, so that when you're testing it, you can see that you've tweaked it in the right direction.
Okay.
And then where it goes on the body, all these things. So I'm talking about all of that stuff. Yeah, and then there'll be a few workshops around that kind of thing as well, and ancestral connection, all of those things.
Okay, so the book's going to be a knowledge base, your understanding of energy, all of the different methods that you've tapped into, acquired, learned, and then you're going to be having some opportunities for instruction based on that stuff for artists or people that find it.
Yeah, it'll be written in the book, and I'm trying to put it down in text form the best way possible to be able to learn it from there, learn these techniques and tools. But I'm just going to do some workshops as well. I'm going to do some online workshops so that anyone can do them anywhere. But I'd like to do, I'm doing some in person in Brisbane as well anyway in the beginning, but I'm just in the process of putting all that together. So all these projects at once, sometimes it feels like it's taking so long, it's not getting anywhere, but as you're chipping away at it, it's all going to come together at one time. It'll all be coming out around the same time.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to it. I'm sitting here on the sideline going, yeah, come on, let's go. I'm keen. It'll be really great, man.
Hurry up.
Yeah, no. Like you said, it would all be at the exact right time, I'm sure. But I think it's great. I think it's really, really good thing.
Yeah. I think I'm going to give the workshop teaching those tools to create certain designs that have frequencies, that have energetic qualities. I think that's going to come out pretty soon. I'm pretty much nearly finished with that. So that'll come out probably before the book, but it doesn't matter.
So before the book, you're going to release something that has like tattoo designs. What would you call it? Like a codex, maybe? Like something that has symbols that you've curated for people?
No,
okay.
I'm not
following.
I'm going to be teaching people how to create their own.
Okay. With ya. Yep.
And even within that, I've decided to not go, oh, here's a whole lot of those designs. We need people to creating the new ones, and they need to work with it in a way that each person is creating their own thing. I don't want to put something out there that becomes a template of things. It's about teaching people how to create their own, how to work with this work, because there's some basic guidelines and fundamental things about it that can be used. It's just about knowing how to.
Yep.
How to do it. And so part of that is sharing work of radiesthesia. So that is work where you are using the pendulum, but it's not in a way of dowsing, and it's not in a way of divination. It's a completely different way. This technique, this work it's been hidden, because only certain people, way back in the day, only certain people were shown this, because it taps into so you're not using your mind, you're not asking questions, you're not looking for something as in dowsing, you're not asking questions as in divination. People that use pendulums and that yes, no, blah, blah. It's not that. It is where you're learning how to come into resonance with the energy of something else, of an object or a person or a shape or a pattern. So this practice, the reason they only taught it to certain people, and it was just like shamans or druids or certain spiritual people, because the practice leads to rising in consciousness. So it raises your consciousness just by doing this work, just by understanding and being in this, being able to activate and work in this way. And to be honest, at the end of it, the pendulum is just a visual tool of what you do, what you have inside anyway. It's your inner technology that we're born with here, that we have. That's what we're activating. The pendulum is just a visual representation of what's really going on here. Eventually you won't need the pendulum. You'll just be able to know and do it and read it.
Fascinating, man. Yeah, in terms of what you were talking about before, like the season or the cycle that tattooing's in, I think a bit of information like this being fed back into the tattooing space is the thing that'll stabilize it again, So like I said, I'm keen to get involved as well, but it's great. And I'll share whatever links you have in this convo or just whenever they're ready, put them up on my platforms and stuff for you. I think that was a really good chat for people to listen into. Is there anything else you want to put out there to round out the chat?
No, I think that's good.
Me too.
That was a good little.
Yeah, there's a bit in there. I feel like I might need to put diagrams in with it for people to follow along. But that's great.
I know it's hard to explain stuff, man. It's hard to put things into words sometimes, and so I hope I haven't confused people.
No.
I'm not the best at describing, at articulating either. So it's
like you probably know, sometimes ending up with more questions after something is actually like you might be confused by the conversation, but that's actually a good direction, because you start going, oh, I don't know about something. So yeah, hopefully, maybe it's like, hopefully you have confused people.
Yeah, in essence, we want to trigger that. Like, it's like, oh, I just found out that I didn't know something. I didn't know that. I didn't know something about something I didn't know. I didn't know that.
Yes.
So it's because it just didn't exist in there. Now I want to know. And early on in my life, that's what triggered me into research. I have a hunger for knowledge. Always have. And the more I learn, the more questions and the more avenues I go down, and it's just continuous. I just want to find out more, and like you said, it brings up more questions, and it's like, oh, I want answers to that. So I want to understand that. Yeah, so that's good.
Yeah, again, it's like you can use the octave analogy. It's like you learn this note and this note and this note, and then it's like pop into the next octave. It's just there's another note. I thought I knew that note. Yeah. So hopefully anyone listening in is a little bit confused. That's a good thing. And thank you, Shane, for your time and your sharing. It's really good. Again, and I'll put all of the links into the show notes and direct people towards you if they want to get some tattooing done, or if they would like to contact you in regards to any of the other things that you do, like you said, the home balancing or the other tools that you create, all the courses. I'll link everyone and send them your way for that. And yeah, I hope you have a good time visiting New Zealand, and we'll check in again when you're back.
Yeah, okay then, brother. Yeah, all good.
I hope you stayed with us on that one. Thanks again, Shane. The links to Shane's pages and profiles are below. There's still no dates on his book or workshops, but give him a follow so you're sure to catch them and you don't miss out. And as always, if you want to reach out or get involved with any of the work that's happening over at Tattoo Pathway, head to the website www.tattoopathway.com. Hope you've all had a lovely day or evening, and we'll catch you next episode.
How did it all go?
Bro, it was huge. It was massive. I can remember part of what we were saying was like, we were talking about burials because I said I was getting stuff covered up. And then you were telling me about the need to cry at a burial for there to be enough water, so they can cross over.
Yes, the river of tears.
Yeah.
So in some cultures, when you pass on, your soul jumps in a boat and is taken to the wherever you go, to the next plane or whatever, and there needs to be enough water to there. And so the reason there's weeping and crying at a funeral or a tangi, the more tears that are shed, the more water there is in the river to take you there. If there's not enough of that, of the tears, you're not going to make it. So that's the concept anyway of why some cultures do that. And you'll see, even with Māori at the tangi, they're there for days crying.
Yeah, okay.
Weeping and making sure there's enough water there.
So fascinating, man. Yeah, because I remember you put that piece in for me, and I understood it from a outside perspective because I've went to one wake when I was in Sumba in the village there. The lady we were staying with, she had to attend to drop some food off, and so I just by proxy ended up there and watched the wailing that the women were going in one at a time to do in the building. And had it explained that it's like they have to go in and let that out. And there was women that were going to do that. So when you're saying it, I'm like, oh yeah, okay. I see almost that practice in the process and I guess the awareness that it's needed and that correlation.
Yeah, so I'm not sure where I first heard that. I think it was like a South American guy who was sharing that with me and how they did that whole concept. And then I just started thinking about most cultures. There is a period of grieving and weeping and wailing and the wake. Even that word kind of maybe means something to do with the wake,
Totally.
The wake of the waves.
Yeah, and there's a passage, there's this channel that needs to be crossed, take you across to it. But where's it going, right? Like most rivers or canals and stuff would lead to a bigger body of water.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. And you hear about, in some understandings, some cultures, they talk about the boatman. When you pass on, you meet up with the boatman and he takes you on the boat and then you go.
Yeah.
So there's something in there.
There is something in it.
Tears provide the water, so you've got enough water to get there.
There's so many different layers to it, especially the boat specifically as well. The boat analogy has been a big one for me. Hey, I've been coming across it, like all of the different cultures that have the symbology of the canoe or the vessel, whatever that boat is, especially in creation stuff, like creation coming out of the water and then going back in. When you leave, you're going back into the water.
Yeah.
But something's taking you across. So many patterns.
I was thinking now about when you look at some of the Egyptian hieroglyphs and the stuff.
Yes.
Recorded on the walls there's that boat in between the life and death.
Yeah, that's the one I was referencing.
It seems to be a vessel that we hop into, or it could be an analogy of some sort, but yeah.
Yeah.
Interesting.
Like I was trying to write some stuff down the other day, and the analogy I was using that was coming to mind was a river and this parting in the river and going one way. And when you go that way, as it was playing out visually for me, there was all of these vessels, and there was me going like, I'm just becoming aware that I'm trying to swim and I can go this way or that way.
Yeah.
And when I go this way, I'm noticing that there's beings, other consciousness or intelligence there that's so used to being there, they've got the information to create entire instruments to move them and other people through the water, and that was the analogy I was using. And since that is when I've been coming across it a lot. And the Egyptian stuff, I was looking at it's like a version of the Egyptian Book of the Dead, which I've had it on the shelf for ages, but just haven't been able to read it properly. Like I was saying to you.
I've got it too.
Yeah. Kind of like I said to you on our last call where, I just hadn't picked up the ancestral thing. you've said it a long time, kind of like the
Mhm.
book's been on the shelf for a long time. I just haven't really
Mhm.
picked it up. And so I'm looking through the book. And so I didn't realize that book is similar to, say, like the biblical texts. It's a canon of lots of different books. Like the Bible's
Mm.
60 books. The Egyptian Book of the Dead's the same. There's the coffin texts, there's the pyramid texts, there's the papyrus texts. There's a compendium of them all. And yeah, they're referencing in a couple of the hieroglyphs. They also mention that words fail. That's why they use hieroglyphs. That's why they use symbology. Because there's more in what we would utter about an image, just considering the image, more information in it.
Yeah.
But a lot of them, there's the ocean and there's the boat. And the boat's, it's the first movement that causes creation type of thing. And there's all of the deities it carries. So fascinating. I've been really drawn into it recently.
I actually was given a book years ago when I went to study this ancient Egyptian knowledge, and the guy who was teaching it had a book available, and it was the Egyptian Book of Life and Death. It's not the Book of the Dead. It's another one that's really, apparently you can't get it. You can only be given it. It can only be
Okay.
passed on to you. I don't think you can buy it or anything. I'm not sure what the circumstances are, but I haven't read it yet, and I need to. But he said that anyone that reads this book after they've read it, their lives are completely different. That their reality changes.
Yeah. Interesting.
So, yeah, I need to read it.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Yeah. Hey, what is that? What do you think the difference is between that sort of engaging or relationship with information to the, say, the prescription of I need to start and finish a book, and the usual pattern of consuming information, like intuitively or
Mm.
an intellect? Is it that type of a thing? How would you frame it?
Yeah, I guess it is like that. It's intuitively taken. So you read to a certain point, and that's all you'll need to know right now. I never force myself to keep reading anything or feel like I finish this book. It's sometimes I've taken years and years to read a book because I've gotten to a certain point, and then I just don't for some reason pick it up, and it's just that just time integrates that, and then I'll pick it up and I read another section, and it's kind of like these stages of learning where there needs to be integration between some of it
Yeah.
for it to be really understood. Because
Yeah.
sometimes if I've read books where I've just continued reading to finish it, and I don't get it, some of it's just going over my head, or I'm not ready to understand it yet. I really see sometimes in some of those gaps where I've stopped reading a book and then continued later, that something in my life has happened where it's like, oh, it just, the coin drops. It's just, yep, I now understand that information. Or there's preparation for the next part. I don't know. My bookshelf is full of books with bookmarks in them at different stages in the reading.
It's
It's
also a great analogy for tattoos, right? As you're saying that, I'm just like, oh yeah, even same sort of thing. I guess once you coming from that more intuitive angle with receiving a tattoo, opposed to pushing yourself to get one finished or something, there's, okay, I might want to get this sort of thing done from the starting at this date and finishing at this date, like write or read the book. But then things need to integrate. I've found that in my own personal tattooing once I started to engage with it like that, or maybe it even started engaging with me like that to catch it. So there's that similarity for sure.
because your energetic is changing, shifting yourself while receiving. There and yeah, there may need to be times where there's pause to integrate before you can take on. Imagine if you just keep forcing it and just get overwhelming, energetically overwhelmed by what's been put in there. But I just don't feel that happens. Like things will come up to make a tattoo be paused for a while
Yeah.
if it needs to be.